He said, I'm not in control of the lights. He said.
Yo, are we rolling?
Yeah.
Alright. Fuck's sake, bro. You want to do this intro?
Nah,
I feel like
I'm
I'm
Gucci.
Nah, bro, you do it.
I'm having for the side. I'm John Stockton of the passes right now.
You do,
okay, let me know. What's this episode again?
Inspiration. Where does it come from? Like, just talking about inspiration, isn't it? Go ahead.
Thank you for queuing in. I'm so sorry. Welcome everyone to episode 3. Sign.
Jay.
This episode we're going to talk about like inspiration, what sparks it, how you turn it from that little idea into something, the steps that you may take, steps that we took, and all of the funny stuff that we've gotten up to. Yeah, let's chop it up.
Inspiration then. So for me, I saw Pharrell talking about this actually, and it was really dope. Pharrell was saying that there are no unique ideas anymore.
True.
The universe is a library, and inspiration is us just checking out one of the books in the library that is the universe. And I was like, that's a really beautiful way of putting it. And I feel it's that, like, sometimes in my journey, I've taken inspiration, like when we were talking in the last episode about being in Tough Gone, working on an album for that first song, like, I don't know where that verse come from.
Yeah.
I heard what the other artists had done.
Yeah.
And I was like, how the hell can I do my thing on this tune that's very rooted in an experience, but then also bring my experience to it, but then still make it uniquely me? And it was like, well, it wasn't like I'd be able to sit and deep it because time was of the essence.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, it forced me to just be like, you know what? I'm here, let's just go with what it is. And I think so inspiration is, for me, the ability to check an idea out of the universe, but it's also allowing yourself to be in a space where you can do that.
Yeah.
Like
okay.
removing that pressure. I feel like,
Yeah.
because going to the session, there was lots of pressure. And then like, I had that moment of when we went in and then everyone kind of gave me space. I felt kind of comfortable. And then it was like, right, cool. Mm-hmm. There's no distractions. I can just be.
Yeah. Just create. Just shed all of them other things, which we did. Like in the video on the way there, you could almost see the tension from the moment like we all collate outside the taxi before we get in, and like we're chopping it up a little bit, but you can feel the cloud, like not clouds per se, but like the tension come in. We get into the taxi, we're chopping it up a little bit, and there's points in that taxi where it's silent, but it's heavy. And then we get out at Tough Gong, and you realize like, but like the physical barrier. It wasn't like this huge wall like some Disney horror film, but like the physical barrier, like the gates. Like, we have to be human for a split second and politic through these gates and make sure that we get checked in and we're in the right place and we don't offend anyone in that process. Like we do it properly. So we went through. And we have to like mentally be there. So we were walking in. The guy's questioning on cameras. He's like, who are you here with? How long? He's guiding the security at the gate. He's locking it behind us, all of this stuff. I was like, okay. And in the video, you can see the combination of like excitement and going, we have to make this practical or else this could be 8 hours sat in our ass, doing nothing and not knowing what to show for it. So yeah, that moment of like walking in when we captured it, going in and then going, okay, we're in. Let's do what we are here to do, which is create space for creativity. Like everyone went and set up their own little corners and went and did them things. We made calls. Kongs brought us in what he wanted to bring us in. All of that happened. We set up. And then 5 minutes in, things were being played at us and being like, welcome to one of the homes of creativity in the world. One of the 7 wonders of the creative world. Go.
It was nuts. Like, it was mad. And I think it was that, like, definitely the journey of, there was so much pressure that, and I think it was like, I think before, in terms of being able to be inspired, I think in the taxi journey for me, it was realizing that before I'd be able to if anything went wrong, I would be able to come from a place of ego and be like, oh, well, this wasn't shot in that way, or this person wasn't contacted, or da 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 da. Like, if I'm deep in it. But like when we arrived there, it was like, oh shit, like this is on me now.
Yeah.
There's nothing that, there's no one I can blame. There's nothing I can do. Not that I would. It's like, I just have to do that thing. And that is like create. And like before that, I'd feel like my creativity would be temperamental. Like I'd have to be on my own to write or be in a certain environment. And that was the first time I like studio wrote, like being in the space around other people and stuff. And I think it was like, yeah, trying to overanalyze everything and just being open. I think being open to being inspired was definitely the biggest lesson I learned there.
Yeah, same for me. Being inspired came from so many different places. From Manchester to London, inspired in being like, be ready to start your creativity from the most humble place. You don't need the right lighting, you don't need the right lens, you don't need the right camera for some of this stuff. To capture what you need to capture, your eye will see it, and the maths that you know about photography will help do the rest. So we were on some crazy taxi rides with some weird ass people, staying in some funny ass places before we even stepped foot in Heathrow. All of them things, and I was like, okay, wherever creativity is going to come from, we're taking it. We're going for a random walk in these weird London streets to have a smoke and just laugh and chop it up. Sick B-roll. Funny stuff came out of that conversation. Nearly falling out of a bunk bed. Funny stuff came out of that conversation. And it was just being like inspiration. The world gives us, again, is probably a way of the way we collectively think, but the world is full, like Pharrell said, full of all of these checkpoints of inspiration. It's like you're playing them old games where you're just collecting wild flowers and seeds and then giving you XP and stuff and giving you stuff for your rucksack that you might need down the line. But there was so much inspiration as we were just like clocking through stuff and checking into the next immediate step. Then we were just like, whatever happens in this next 12 hours, it's going to be jokes. That 12 hours, we checked into that weird Airbnb. We checked out of the weird Airbnb. Heathrow Airport, even just in the waiting room, some random older American guy who's traveling came over and just chopped up with us for some time, telling us about just whatever he was up to. Inspirational moments where you're just like, yo, this guy is just on his solo ones, just learning about the world. He's just out, just in the airport. He's like, where are you going next? He gave us some weird spiel about how he's traveling about, and he's from some Southern American state, and he was just sat in Heathrow Airport in the middle of his travels. So many different elements that taught us. That group of girls were sat on the next table being like, what is all of this gear you've got? And they were watching me, trying to work out, like, oh, maybe I'll try this lens. And I just gave up, and they were just like, oh, you guys are, like, you just created for the fun of it. Yeah. Like, yeah, bet, this is what we're here to do. And just openly sharing what we were doing. And they were like, oh, that's sick. By the end of it, they were like, good luck, hope you have fun. Yeah. So like, that inspiration was coming from every immediate step we had to do.
It was nuts. Like, I think inspiration is interesting as well because like, it feels like it's monetized now. I feel like one of the things that I find hard to find inspiring is social media because inspiration is monetized. Like everyone is positioning themselves as like a guru of inspiration on a platform that is designed to be uninspiring.
Let me start that again by saying, not everyone is out here selling their booty and 90-day plan. Yeah. But that is the premise of what's frustrating about the social media.
It's like LinkedIn. Like everyone on LinkedIn is like, 5 things I learned from the last 6 months, and it's like, do I care?
Nah,
like,
go outside and live, man.
Go outside and live, but also like, learning is the application in your everyday practice. So how much have you learned if you're applying them to LinkedIn and not life?
Yeah, it's sometimes inspiration is too theoretical, I think. I've had this where I've been stuck behind, like before I reached that phrase where I'm like, I don't have to create constantly to be a creative person, where in my head, that's what it was. I'm fortunate that I didn't go down the route where creative endeavors pay my bills, or else no bill would have run right now. Because right now, that's not what I'm doing. I'm paying different types of bills. Shout out the 9 to 5. 9 to 5 is not a bad thing. And for me, that's, again, part of it. That's part of the inspiration, is that sometimes you have to take the vegetables from where they come from. So yeah, having those conversations and sometimes seeing people go, oh, that's not what motivates them, or they don't find any enjoyment in something. And it's, again, finding the enjoyment in any and every opportunity, and not to like sound fluffy and weird and philosophical about it, but I've studied. I don't sit here and quote philosophers and all types of sociology things, but we're educated out here. Just letting the people know who want to check my P's and Q's. We are educated out here. But the philosophy of knowing that like there is enjoyment that can come from even the most painful scenarios, and the ability to pull that out is inspiration. And for me, like the talent and skill and what is perceived as the magic is how quick someone can do that. The ability for some people to go, I have experienced a really horrible thing or something that pulls away from creativity, but I'm not going to turn that thing into a world in itself. Some people who become their problem. And again, not talking about individuals, but just talking about like how easy it is in our society to become your problem. But now it's our culture and our way of being has taught us that that problem is just a different button on a shirt that you have to wear sometimes. Sometimes you have to go, as quick as that thing happened, you know what? Give and take with the other hand is you can flip it, that there is always going to be something inspirational from it. Even if it's a lesson that says never step left again in that scenario, that's an inspiration, because as Kendrick Lamar has taught us this week, you step one way and then you step the other. Otherwise, you get called all types of hoe.
I think that's the thing as well. I feel like because inspiration in some ways has been monetized, I think, I can't remember who it was. It was saying that their inspiration or their purpose of creating was either to inspire, educate, or inform. And I feel like that formula does sound cool for being creative, but inspiration is supposed to come from any sort of way or place. And so it's hard to be prescriptive about it. I feel like when I thought about doing this episode, I was engaging with content from creators on Instagram who were like, what is it to be creative? Like, come on this holistic retreat and we'll peel off your layers from your 9 to 5. And I'm like, actually,
YouTube ayahuasca.
Yeah, you can't do YouTube ayahuasca. It's actually peeling off the layers of yourself, or like, just like you say, going through the motions. I think like having something outside of your creativity, if it's not something that allows you to pay your bills yet, helps. I feel like sometimes like with artistry particularly, that's the lens I speak from because I'm an artist myself. Like when you see artists portray themselves as one way and then their reality is actually they have a 9 to 5, like all of us do, and where they're doing something different as well to pay the bills or to support themselves.
Or it fulfills a different part of their creativity.
Yeah, it's like you can't, because your spirit isn't right. You're representing one thing in the world and then you're going to do something else. There's going to be a disconnect. So where can your mind find peace to check the inspiration book out of the universe that's relevant for that scenario if there's no parity between the two?
A great author wrote a book titled A Spook Who Sat by the Door.
The book is like literally it's down there.
The book is behind me right now.
It's on the shelf somewhere.
Shout out to that book.
Yeah.
Again, I don't remember names because they're not the checkpoints in my life.
It's not something green. Yeah, I wrote it.
Sam Green?
Yeah, that's it. Sam Green with an E.
E on the end of green. Anyone who wants to go on Goodreads, follow me on Goodreads. You'll see the things. But that book for me was a small eye opener in the skill and ability to be in a position that you know that you've got, or that like trusting in yourself, you know you've got the ability to change into a better direction, And it doesn't necessarily have to be some spiritual place that you have to see yourself being. It's not some Zionistic place where that's the only way you can exist. Sometimes we accept that, especially in the world we live in today, you have to be able to do good in Babylon to cash them checks. And there are spiritual checks, physical checks, emotional checks, all of them things. You have to be able to do good in a world that isn't always good around you. And for me, that was one of the balances that I found. And that book taught me that it's possible to do it without losing any of that inspirational spark. The fact that I can still I approach everything that I do in my life in the exact same way. You will see the guy wearing his crisp shoe, tattoo out, shorts on, chain on, rings on, hair up or down, doing all of those different endeavors, because that is the way that I then take myself that's one of the many steps of creating the acceptable being, to take the sparks and do all of those things in it. So yeah, for me, inspiration was first learning how I step into any of those spaces I have to step into, and then be able to go, someone swings, you twist an arm. If someone hands you an instrument, you learn to play it. If someone asks you to speak, you speak. If someone asks you to be quiet, you learn what quiet means to them. So I think, inspiration was the adaptability while keeping form. And it's not the disappearing and going to find yourself in the hills that you were never from in the first place. It's none of those things. But yeah, for me, that ability to be solid and flexible at the same time, knowing that you may not be in a world that you choose to align with, but that's not what our culture means. Our culture is birthed in the non-acceptance of a way of being.
I think that inspiration can come from that resistance of no longer feeling like you were saying, like you have to code switch, but bringing yourself to every situation. I feel like some of my most creative ideas across everything that I do has come from once I've been able to marry all aspects of myself and, like you say, just present as I am. I feel that there's so much inspiration that's lost in trying to repurpose and repackage, and we see that artistically, like artists who change their whole image to go down a new direction, and it's like, you don't need to change the essence of who you are. You're just inspired by something else right now, and that's cool. That's growth, and that's what's going to give you that longevity, because when people go back to your discography, they can see that you've started off in boom bap, then you maybe moved towards trap, then you maybe moved towards grime, then you came back to boom bap hip hop, but now you're approaching boom bap hip hop differently because you've got the flavors from trap and grime in your cadence. It's people forgetting that it's a marathon, and across this marathon that is creativity, there are various checkpoints that you can hit.
To speak as a fan on that, watching that happen and be a world of that, again, anyone who's listened to previous episodes, I'm wearing Kano merch right now. Kano has been a perfect example for me, perfect with an asterisk, because everything deserved. But to go through that, Home Sweet Home, P's and Q's, rapping with Mike Skinner on a beach in his jorts, that era of Kano, all the way through to Hoodies All Summer, Frying Fish with Popcorn and gigs and all of them, and gets that era that we went on as fans, who it was also a space in which as fans you were given space to grow, and it was encouraging to grow, that the people who are listening to Hoodies All Summer are not the people who are listening to P's and Q's. If they existed in the same timeline, that would be two different groups of people. So I think for me, watching some of my favorite artists in the world foster that environment in which we went from a culture where it was violent and aggressive as a reflection of experience to three wheel-ups in that era in which you experience the grief and loss and energy that comes from those when you're watching them go back and forth, passing that mic in the 9 Nights scene. That for me was okay, we're in a world now where I've been allowed to go from P's and Q's early grime era where everyone's wearing the biggest hoodie, rapping on the staircase. Like, went from that era, we've been allowed to grow, to grieve, celebrate, become the adults that didn't have to, like, compress themselves in any way. Like, that was such a happy element for me, because now I wear this. I've got a hoodie's also my hoodie that I wear in the middle of work meetings. Anyone knows what I do? It's very different to creative world outside of this. Some of the things that pay them bill. But for me, yeah, being able to be, as a fan, allowed to move through this space in a culture that, again, is filled with so many people who have disappeared to reinvent themselves and regurgitate. And as a fan, you've seen people like awkwardly hop, step, and jump between fandoms, or call it eras now. No offense to anyone who's going through eras. But to go through all of them things, yeah, for me, it's the flexibility and the freedom as a fan is part of the creativity. Asheroth is a great example. I am so far away from I Love College, but I will listen to that new album and mixtape with Heather Gray regularly. I've got it ordered on cassette tape because now I love cassette tapes. So when that arrives next week, thank you both, Asheroth and Heather Gray. When that arrives, I get to enjoy that part of creativity in a space that still allowed me to grow and develop. So like you said, being able to do that openly is yeah.
I think also the way the industry's changed, like obviously it's harder to get hype or critical acclaim very, very quickly because everything's immediately consumable. I think we want artists that have longevity now. We want that growth. Like, we want an artist where you can see that story. The whole world waited, 10 years for Jay Electronica to drop an album?
We waited so long that we ended up raising ourselves. We waited for Jay Electronica so long to teach us how to cook. We just started learning how to cook ourselves. We started looking for food elsewhere.
We looked at, we were taking feature verses. We took an album that was finished off, which were songs taken off his SoundCloud, which was 99.9% finished by Jay-Z.
Yeah.
And he somehow gets, one of the greatest rappers of all time to finish his debut album.
Yeah.
It's interesting just seeing the way in which inspiration and creativity flows. I think, the longevity piece is where it's at. And you can see that transition now, particularly in the landscape of UK creativity. You can see that artists are building up discographies. They're trying to build a wider image or a wider universe. An excellent example of that is Little Sims.
Yeah. It's a universe.
Cultivating a universe around herself, and then there's longevity within that. Or like Kano, like you were saying. Or Wretch. Wretch has been very good at that. Gets as well, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting Bashy's now back to UK rap. Yeah,
Bashy's coming back. Chip, thinking about what you were saying as well, in terms of the grown piece, it was really nice watching Chip do his GRM session. Have you watched that?
Yeah.
With the composers and
Over Toxic by Britney.
Listening to him do those bars that he wrote as a kid, but as a grown man, in a suit, and him chatting in between about the bars, being oh, this didn't age well and stuff like that. That's dope. That's the moments that we're wanting for the culture to continue to give us. And I think inspiration comes from that. He can be inspired by playing back some of those songs because he's not that person he was when he wrote it.
Yeah. And I think it's, the ability to reflect and take from that. We're in an era now where we're seeing different generations start wearing the baggy jeans and the waist belts and the chains and the hair over one eye, going we thought when we had that inspiration in the early 2000s and then realized some of it's in the right place, some of it's in the wrong place. As cultures from millennials who grew up in early 2000s and we had MySpace and all of that, we were flogged as a community and a culture and a generation for MySpace, Facebook and all of that. We were told we were poison on human society with the shit that we were doing with them social medias. And we were bro, have you not? MySpace is hilarious. You get to argue over who's your favorite 8 human beings in the world in your friend circle of 10 people. MySpace was so innocent when we look back at it, but we had to take as a group so much flack for what we were involving ourselves in and choosing to involve ourselves in. We didn't even try to explain MSN to anyone.
No.
We were just like, this is just where we are. BBM, any of them things, we didn't even, like, we just accepted the flock that came from those behind us who didn't understand what it was sparking. That's when I first discovered JME. JME, MySpace, when he was skating around, posting videos of him skating around uni. That was when I discovered JME, and I was following him, doing 96 bars of revenge and shit, and becoming a grime MC, doing little shows at unis and following him around that way. But then he was like, oh, my brother raps too, Skepta. Like, that era changed so much. And then now we're seeing kids go, oh yeah, but we can do all of that. But TikTok and all of these things. And you're like, okay, inspiration comes in waves. Again, like Pharrell said, no idea is new under the sun. But like, what inspiration are people carrying, or are they willing to try and learn the same lessons? People who are willing to put themselves through the same experience, trying to learn a new meaning. And we're at that age where we're watching people being like, we've done this. We've fought for social medias to stop at being a funny communicator. They don't need to be anything else. Our generation went, yeah, we went too far with some of this. They don't need to be all of those other things. Find your funny friends, find your little communities, but the hate and all of that stuff, the judging people, the being a judger of others, like all of that doesn't run, because you have to go outside and be a human. You can't wear that one thing you saw on the internet if it's minus 20 degrees outside. Of like, our world is different outside. So, yeah, seeing how inspiration is twisted and morphed as different people may look at the same thing.
I think it's like the passing of the torch, isn't it? It's like, like I could hear Hood Is Awesome is an album that has inspired me, and I take that torch and then apply it into my own marathon of creativity. It's like, what did I learn from that? That album taught me that, you know, it's not just about creating music, but it's creating the culture around it.
Did you just use the marathon continues bar?
Yeah.
Straw. Appreciate it.
I'll be cooking. I feel like in terms of like that, like he showed you the culture. It wasn't like him trying to tell you, he showed you. It was like you're saying, like the 9-night scene, or it could be the video with Popcorn and at his mum's house, and it just being like what every one of our family gatherings look like. It's inviting people into that, so people who aren't from those communities as well can take that torch forward and be like, yo, I want to, that's what I think of that culture now. I want to be a part of that. Or perhaps I want to take that inspiration and do that with my community or with my family. I think that's
understand what that looks like for us, because again, different people do it very different. So just understanding most cultures have
those things,
that level of community.
Wake 9-night. But yeah, I feel like inspiration is that. It's the passing of the torch. I feel like it's something that as creatives, we need to kind of unpack more in terms of what's going to inspire us and how we keep moving forward. Like even for myself, like as you said, having like a 9 to 5 and having like highs and lows and peaks and troughs of your creativity. It's about being open, but then it's also like trying to find a way to keep the creativity faucet on. And I guess that's like being open for me, not taking too much on. Also just wanting to explore and being curious, like
willing to
music.
Yeah, for me, creativity, being willing to explore stuff that isn't just in that same funnel and space has been huge for me. How many times do I randomly drop you a note that like, yo, I'm barring this morning? I regularly will be like, yo, I got bars today. Inspiration. Or I'll be like, look at this random thing that I shot as a picture of the dog, or I'm outside doing stuff and I just won't shoot at all, or oh, look who I've bumped into. Yeah, for me, that like taking inspiration from all of those possible places makes sense to round off that inspiration. So now when I'm shooting about music, I have some idea of what the spark in music inspiration looks like, feels like, presents itself. When I'm out like with a camera and I see other people doing stuff, I've got that eye where I'm like, they're having a moment that might be a checkpoint in their day. I can shoot that without making it about me and the camera. That's one thing I've learned, is that like, it's not even to make a thing about that moment of inspiration. It's just to let it be the springboard for whatever's going on.
Yeah, man. We want to hear what you guys think about inspiration. What inspires you? What is inspiration to you? What is the purpose? Chat to us, innit? Get involved in the comments below. But this is the 1000 Fan Theory podcast. If you like what you heard, share, subscribe, do all of the things them, innit?
Tell your people them, tell your dog, all the things you want to do.